Welcome to the Grand Compendium. Today I have two horror stories for you. One tale of a DM trying to recreate phasmophobia in their D&D game, and another of a crash out that leads to a player cutting all of their ties to that friend group. Without further ado, let's get straight into it. This story is titled "The DM Wanted to Recreate Phasmophobia." At the time, I had been dating this person, who we'll call DM, and we had both gotten pretty into D&D for the first time ever. A friend of ours had DM'd for us before, and now it was DM's turn to take a shot at DMing for the group. Our group consisted of DM, me, two online friends, and this time around, an IRL friend. DM had really wanted a horror concept. We had been into horror together for months, and we had written stories together. So it wasn't all that surprising when they came back to me with a ghost hunting adventure, which sounded sick. At first, at least. They had proposed that the party would be working for a company that hunted ghosts, and each session our party will be stationed at a different house, and in each house it was our mission to find out more about the ghosts and get rid of them. Basically Phasmophobia online, but instead with D&D characters that would be presumably tied into some of this. I hadn't thought of it that way at first, but now it does ring a bell. Especially since they had gotten the game recent to these events, and were pretty upset that I couldn't get it too to play with them. Anyway, the idea sounded pretty cool. I had thought, keyword thought, that those ghosts would entail a good mix of story elements to keep the roleplay alive, and they would likely have stat blocks for combat. So we would have both story and combat each session. That would make for, while repetitive, good fun, at least for a while. Especially with each of our unique classes and backgrounds to make up for any boringness that might pop up. Oh, how wrong I was. I agree with OP here. I like the idea on paper. Yes, it may be somewhat repetitive, but that doesn't really matter as long as it's a fun campaign where you can just have a good time with friends. But I have a feeling that DM is going to drop the ball somewhat. You see, the first problem arose when I learned that DM did not plan for any combat at all. I do not know the reason that they did not choose to. It was not a lack of resources for knowledge, as my nerd ass had made a document that detailed how to set up different aspects like stat blocks, since I was intrigued by DMing too, but had not been given the opportunity. But it also was not for lack of knowing it was an option, as our last DM had done combat with us. Now, I know that combat's not necessary, but it is an integral part of D&D's system from what I've learned, and completely taking it away without reason had been an odd decision to say the least. Next, DM had decided that they did not want us to be any unique race or class. They straight up wanted us to be normal humans. In a fucking fantasy ttrpg. This is the part that pisses me off the most about this story looking back, that we did not get the creative freedom to be whatever we wanted within the world of D&D, but instead were reduced to regular humans that basically did not have a class because the DM not only restricted us into one thing, but also did not acknowledge the abilities the classes had. That leads into my next point. DM did not actually take the time to learn D&D's system. I knew them very well, and from everything I had seen, I could tell that they just didn't take more than 2 glances at D&D before deciding that it was the new best thing for them to cram their ideas into. They did not acknowledge the abilities of our classes, they did not understand rolling, and they did not understand what makes D&D what it is. Knowing all of this, I did try to steer them towards another TTRPG system, in hopes that it would actually take their interest due to it suiting their style better. But they unfortunately did not take the bait, and I was not about to catch the wrath of them being upset. Now, after all of this, we all begrudgingly started the campaign. It went pretty okay the first few sessions. I didn't enjoy it much, but it may just not have been my cup of tea. As everyone else was making fun with the only roleplay aspect of the campaign, I personally also just think I'm a rather shit player because it's hard for me to roleplay for long periods of time, but I digress. It was going okay. Well, that was until one thing. So I had specifically made my character aromantic asexual for this campaign, as there had been a lot of uncomfortable stuff around romance in the last campaign I had been in, and I just wanted a good, completely platonic time playing. I didn't want romance for my character, it didn't suit them, and I didn't want it. DM had a DM PC, and usually they wanted our characters to be in a relationship, and they had suggested it beforehand. I had said no this time, and they seemed a little upset, but like they had gone over it. You guys can't riz up each other, but you can riz up the ghosts, and DMPC. I shit you not, some version of that was said. I brushed it off because I'm generally not the overly jealous type. I had had problems with DM in the past, and that's actually the reason we are not together anymore, which is a story for a whole other subreddit. But I was naive back then and didn't realize a lot of things. I digress. The real issue popped up when someone actually did jokingly try to raise up the DMPC. I had not been there, as I wasn't feeling good and didn't want to play that day, and the session continued as expected. Well, one player tried to jokingly for something. Do they not have any other words they can use? Sorry. As DM had said multiple times that players can... sorry. Well, when one player tried to jokingly resent the DM PC, as DM had said multiple times that players can do, DM proceeded to call that person a creep and claim that they were uncomfortable, even though the person had just done what all the players were basically insisted upon doing, because DM had mentioned this idea multiple times. I actually wanted to quit the campaign after that, and luckily DM lost motivation for it and kept canceling sessions after that happened. So I didn't exactly have to tell them that I wasn't a big fan of their DMing style. Anyways, this was basically a part 2 to my introduction to DnD. I haven't played a game since this one fizzled out. Alright, well, my first thought I have on this story is that I'm pretty confident that these are a group of teenagers, given by the use of the word Riz almost 3 times in a row. On a more serious note, I think this is a group that would have benefited from a Session 0. OP never specified if they had one or not, but I'm gonna go with the latter. Campaigns or sessions that lean more heavily into RP do absolutely work. Our table, personally, has had more than a few sessions where we just RP'd the entire time. But I agree with OP that D&D is far from the best system for this style of game, especially if all the player characters are forced to be carbon copies of one another with 0 abilities. That's probably the worst thing this DM did, in my opinion, removing the player's ability to feel unique on a mechanical level. That can feel a bit disappointing. Not that it matters much when your game seems to just be dedicated to RP, where you won't be able to use any of those abilities to begin with. Though OP never really fleshed out what actually happened in-game, at least from a session-to-session basis. OP did say they weren't a fan of long RP sessions, which could also just be an issue on them as a player. If the rest of the party was fine with there being no combat, then I really don't see much of an issue with that overall. That is, if the DM weren't the problem. They don't seem to be the worst DM ever, but clearly they didn't bother to learn the rules of the game before trying to homebrew something together. It's fine to be a beginner without much experience, but usually you're better off running a pre-written module to get used to how the game runs before diving into the more complicated stuff. Anyways, that's our first story finished. Now let's head on to our second. Our second story is titled, I accidentally made a friend crash out and burn every bridge he's got, and the in-game aftermaths were weird. Part 1, the crash out. A lot of this part involves above-board drama surrounding my friend group's many ongoing games, but if you're only interested in the in-game aftermath, skip to part 2. So I have this friend, we'll call him Zeke. He's an avid ttrpg player, at one point playing in 8 games a week, 1 a night and 2 separate games on Saturdays. He knows the systems he plays back to front, makes amazing characters, and is both skilled as a player and DM. My whole friend group initially formed from an r/LFG post years ago, and has been consistently playing multiple games a week since 2021, and he's been there since day 1. I played in many of those same games, being almost as big of a ttrpg nerd as he is. He was one of us in every way that mattered. He's also a little toxic. His jokes tend to go a bit too far. He's a bit narcissistic, and he's definitely thin-skinned, and can't take what he dishes out. But aside from that, he was decent enough and I liked playing with him. Up until about a month ago, I was in 4 games with him, 3 of which he was a fellow player, and 1 of which had him as the DM. And then he had a crash out. So a couple months prior, August of 2025, we'd gotten into a fight. I'd made a comment that came out a bit snarkier than I'd intended, and he launched into my DMs angrily ranting about me always doing that. And I was genuinely baffled by what he was talking about. He says I'm always making disparaging remarks at him, and I complain about how I can't say anything to anyone on our Discord server without him making it about himself, and then choosing to take it in the worst way possible. But I do apologize for hurting his feelings multiple times. Even to this day, looking back through our conversations, I still don't know what specifically set him off, but I was genuinely sorry I upset him. That didn't stop him from escalating it into a fight that some of my other friends had to step in and help mediate. Thank God for them. Real homies know how to use their words. Fast forward to about a month ago, and for months now, I've been walking on eggshells a bit because I don't want to upset him. We're on a voice call with another mutual friend, Jenny, and she makes a Freudian slip, and he jumps on her case about it. Meanwhile, a few days earlier, I'd just been dealing with some unrelated family trauma, and he'd just word for word quoted my brother when my dad made a similar slip in that fight. Pissed, I told Zeke to shut up and leave our friend alone. That's it. That's the sum total of the argument. Conversation goes back to normal for a few minutes, but then he silently drops off the call. The next day, he leaves a message in the Discord channel for the game he's running that says he can no longer run it for personal reasons. Almost simultaneously, I receive a message from another mutual friend, Jake, who was also in that game and was DMing one of the other games we ran. Jake is vaguely offering his emotional support, though at the time I think it's still because of the family stuff Jake helped me get through. It wasn't. I come to learn that Zeke had sent a private message to Jake, Jenny, and Mickey, the DM of the 3rd game we shared, that he was quitting all other games and effectively burning every bridge he had left in the server. He didn't say why, but I was the common denominator in all of those games. Jake in particular had had a long fight with him on my behalf, and that is what had prompted him to reach out to me. I also eventually come to learn that the fight from months ago that I thought was resolved was in fact not, and he'd been building a seething anger towards me this whole time. I like to think I'm not totally oblivious, but genuinely it caught me off guard how much he disliked me, and he was willing to basically nuke his entire social circle to get away from me. In the aftermath, I also learned that one of my friends, Adam, had him permanently muted on Discord after being the target of Zeke's mean jokes. For a while, his wife, Liana, didn't play with us anymore because of him. Jake, Mickey, and Jenny were kind of just tolerating him, and Jenny's husband basically never interacted with our group at all because of him. Altogether, despite me apparently being the cause of this meltdown, I was one of the only people that still actively liked hanging out with Zeke. That's the end of part 1 of the post, and I've gotta say, I don't really like Zeke. Clearly he's got some issues that I'm not a fan of. I don't particularly like people who throw out mean comments or jokes, but can't receive them in kind. I can be somewhat an asshole myself, but I'd never get mad at someone for treating me with that same energy. I don't really understand how people behave that way, honestly. Now, I don't know why OP defends him so much. I understand that they're friends, but clearly even the rest of the group don't really like him all too much. And he seems to be more than a little toxic, in OP's own words. The only conclusion I'm really coming to is that there's something missing in the story, which even OP admits to not knowing what caused the outburst. Anyways, let's move on to part 2, which covers the in-game aftermath. Part 2, the in-game aftermaths. So here's the in-game aftermath of this. The 3 DMs of the games he shared with me all independently said to him, "If you leave, you're not coming back to this game." They didn't even discuss it with each other before giving him that ultimatum, and he still chose to leave. In Mickey's rather silly Pathfinder game, Zeke's character was the son of a rich nobleman, and so the nobleman's battle butler showed up alone on a boat. We were at sea at the time. Wrestled our barbarian into submission when the barbarian tried to stop him from taking Zeke's character, and then drag Zeke's character off to return to his family. It's a lot nicer of an ending compared to his previous character, who committed some serious crimes in universe, and was magically transformed into an Oni and is now rotting in exile in the spirit realm as punishment. In Jenny's Pathfinder game, his goblin alchemist chose to stay with a local healer to improve his craft. It's a simple and sweet ending for the story of one of Zeke's nicest characters. But the real story is in Jake's horror-themed D&D campaign. This campaign had just begun at the time this all came to a head. Our party is level 2 now, and we were only level 1 when it happened. We're a new adventuring party, technically 2 separate parties competing against each other. It's a big table. We do all the you meet in a tavern stuff and set off to prepare for our first quest. The challenge is to see which party can find the most impressive quest to complete within a certain time frame, and the winning party gets passes to access the walled city we're camping outside. It's a refugee camp that's formed outside an already severely overcrowded city. Zeke's character in this game is a young 8 intelligence fisherman turned adventurer, and his idea is to go fishing and open up a soup kitchen. And while it's a practical idea to help, it's not what the party decides to do. Then the incident happens, and session 3 rolls around without Zeke at the table. We go to look for him, but aside from a note in his tent of "gone fishing," there's no sign of him. Everyone above board knows Zeke chose to leave, but our characters don't. The first day passes, and we hope he returns, but he doesn't. The second day passes, and we go investigate the lake, but there's no sign he ever made it there. We also find some vampiric dogs in the woods, but no sign that he had been anywhere near them. On the third day, we find some of his fishing line near the well in the camp. We all think, did he try to go fishing in the well? Did he fall in and die? Jake had said by this point that he planned to kill Zeke's character off. We thought he was just gonna get a stupid ending, but no, that's not what happened. Instead, we climbed down the well and found a whole cave system underground. We found more of those vampiric dogs, plus a large vampiric beast thing from whatever homebrew setting Jake was using. We barely fought them off, and it took every single potion, spell, and healing resource we had to not TPK. And then we found his armor and weapons. We spent some time crawling through a cave, and eventually find ourselves in an open ravine, in the middle of which is a crude grave, although we don't immediately recognize it as such. There we find Zeke's character buried alive. Mind you, he's being played by the DM Jake. My cleric tries using Turn Undead to check, but it seemingly has no effect. So we return to town together, but we're all keeping an eye on him. When we return, we find that an NPC we'd left behind had gotten worried about us and had gathered up a rescue party composed primarily of other NPCs from Zeke's backstory. Zeke's character gets nervous just at the edge of town, and asks if it's really alright for him to come back into town. Most of the party is suspicious, but the rogue invites him in anyways. He comes in and is welcomed by his friends, as people are celebrating his safe return. My character offers him some water. He does look like absolute shit at this point, and he chugs it. It was holy water, and it melts his insides like acid. He lashes out, we pin him down, and I offer his character a chance at mercy, as long as he holds back, while our sorcerer, who doesn't have their subclass yet, but is going to be a homebrew blood magic sorcerer, offers up blood to help quench the thirst. He refuses both of our offers, tries to attack again, and is summarily executed by our barbarian. Session ends after that, and I'm left feeling quite strange. Both because of how vindictive Jake was towards Zeke's character by arranging that, and because it felt weirdly like the events of the last few months in miniature. Someone who I thought was my friend turning against their whole friend group for reasons that feel entirely out of my control. And now I don't know what to feel all over again. And one final thing. To Zeke, if you read this and figure out I'm talking about you, you're an asshole sometimes, and I'm still not sure what I did to hurt you, but that doesn't make my mistakes okay, and I'm sorry for hurting you. I wish we could have talked things out better, but sometimes things just aren't meant to be. This second part kind of felt like a 180. I'm not really gonna talk about the first 2 campaigns that OP covers. There isn't really anything interesting to take away from them. As for Jake's campaign, I don't really understand why he decided to give Zeke's character such an unfortunate fate. I understand that Jake definitely didn't like him, but treating that person's character that way, especially after they left, is just a bit strange. Though I will say OP is acting like it wasn't the party's choice, even more specifically his choice, to give holy water to the character, which led to their death. It just seems sort of hypocritical in a way, I suppose, to then go on and lament about it. But that still doesn't really make Jake any better in the matter. Though I will say that the idea is cool on paper. Imagine you find a lost party member in the woods and bring them back to town, only to start slowly noticing the symptoms of vampirism. That sounds pretty cool to me. But anyways, I don't have much more to add. This is new content that I sort of decided I'd try to do on a whim. I'll say about releasing these videos maybe bi-weekly, even weekly if I can. But anyways, if you want to check out a D&D campaign with hopefully less horror, consider checking out Heroes of Valeria, our very own actual play series. Anyways, with that, I hope that you all have a good day.